Good day, everybody. It's Michael Leveris from JurisQ.com. I'm here with an attorney who does divorces with a touch of mediation. And we're going to talk about what it means. As you know, we invite different attorneys, different practice areas, and we answer legal FAQs. Today we have Alla Kurolapnik with us. How are you?
Hi, nice to be here, Michael. I'm well, thank you.
Pleasure to have you. Thank you for your time. And today we want to talk about a get. A get is a Jewish divorce. You, of course, serve different communities, and you come up quite often in the Jewish community with a get situation. So please explain to us what is a get and how you deal with it, either in a real litigation in a divorce or in mediation.
So a get, which is what you said correctly, it is essentially a Jewish divorce. So the one thing I think I'm gonna, kind of educate everybody on, and I bet you not everybody knew, New York is probably one of the only few states in the union that considers a religious wedding a valid wedding for the purposes of a marriage. So in other words, you do not need a marriage license from City Hall. If the wedding was officiated by a clergyman or somebody else who, and the law defines it, the domestic relations law defines those people, if it's solemnized by one of those individuals, your marriage is valid. Okay, so in those circumstances, not only do you then need, let's say, if you are Jewish, a Jewish divorce, which is a get, the next thing that you need is also a civil divorce. So you cannot in New York get married religiously, leave your spouse, and then get remarried, because that next marriage is going to be void ab initio. It will not be a valid marriage until you have a civil divorce.
Right.
So, and I bet you not too many people knew that. So let's talk about the get a little bit. A get is essentially a Jewish divorce. And what happens in those circumstances is that the man has to give it and the woman has to accept it. That's the Jewish law on divorces. I have often had circumstances during my career where the man wouldn't give a get, and they'd handle that over the head and tickle it over the head until there was a settlement of some sort. The domestic relations law has found a kind of, they put in provisions now in the law that help protect spouses where the other spouse withholds a get. Right. So one of the things that, we have to, when we do file these divorce papers, if you've had a religious wedding, you have to then affirm in the positive that you have taken or will take all steps within your power to allow your spouse to remarry. Right. That is actually the get laws. And that was because there was a slew of litigation over these sort of situations where a man wouldn't give a get to a woman, and then the woman would be considered an aguna, which is in Hebrew means a chained woman, and she cannot remarry. And, there's ways now within litigation to kind of deal with that, in that if a spouse is refusing to give the other spouse a get, you can make provisions within, allowing for additional maintenance or equitable distribution, because it can affect really a lot of areas of your life. And it can, affect your ability to earn money, to work within the community, to remarry within the community, to procreate within the community. And this is what, Judaism, in essence, like that's their beliefs. So if you're, prohibiting one spouse from doing that, there's laws now, or at least case law, that allows or gives judges the discretion in any event to award more or less to a spouse in order to compensate for that. Okay. So that's in respect to litigation. Right. Certainly in mediation, the get issue itself would go in front of what we call an arbitration panel, a Beth Din, because the Beth Din has the power to issue the actual physical get or the divorce paper.
And Beth Din is a Jewish court.
Correct.
Exceptional
So it
few
very
levels.
different than the Jewish court in Israel, which
Right.
again, we could spend a whole topic talking about because
Mhm.
they have real authority to handle certain things.
Okay.
In at least in New York, and I'll talk about New York. I can't speak globally across the United States or in Europe, but I can speak certainly in New York. In New York, you have to submit yourself to the jurisdiction of the Beth Din. If you want the Beth Din to decide certain things for you. In other words, what a lot of people in the frum community or the religious, community do. And they don't necessarily have to be Orthodox, but just religious enough that this is what their beliefs are. They'll go in front of the Beth Din to arbitrate all the same issues that are normally dealt with, and whether in mediation or in litigation in any divorce.
And would
So
you
they'll
be
talk.
involved in that?
I'm sorry.
You as an attorney, would you be involved in the based in proceedings?
If look, I've been hired on, sometimes to consult and to be with, and I've gone to the arbitration meetings, and we've done that. So they act really as this arbitration panel and mediation panel, sort of. They act as their own independent, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it arbitration because that's what they define it as, and I'll
Right.
explain the difference why. They're not really mediators; they're more arbitrators, because what you sign, the law is interpreted an agreement to you sign an agreement to arbitrate when you go into the Beth Din, and the Beth Din issues what they have final authority to issue certain decisions. However, now here's the loophole: the Beth Din, they can, but it won't be valid. They can issue decisions on child support and maintenance, and but if one of the parties don't agree to what they've done, they always have the ability to go to court. Those things are not binding. Okay.
Okay.
But if you submit yourself to the jurisdiction of the Beth Din to decide all the issues in your divorce, for instance, when the marital residence gets sold, or how you're going to divvy up the bank accounts, you are effectively saying, I want the Beth Din to help me decide these issues. I don't want to do it in front of a civil judge in the courts in New York. This is where I want to be. So as mediators, we don't really see, it's out of my hands. I can work as a lawyer with those clients, and I can consult with them. I can review the agreements when the agreements are put together by both lawyers, but we allow the community and the Beth Din to arbitrate between the parties with attorneys' help. So that's, a more collaborative way of doing it.
See, this is why it's important to hire an attorney if you're going through a divorce in accordance with the Jewish law, Jewish Orthodox law, with an attorney like Alla Kurolapnik, like yourself, that actually knows the intricacies of the Jewish laws that relates to get to divorces, and you're able to properly advise clients even in front of the based in proceedings. And of course, if anybody is going through such a divorce or contemplating going through Jewish divorce, it's very important to hire an attorney, Alla Kurolapnik, or somebody like that, who also implements mediation in the deciding the divorce and advocating for divorce parties. The phone number is on the bottom of the screen. If you have any questions, please call for a consultation. But before we end, I have a question for you, Alla, because I have a friend who wants to get married, actually have a chuppah in Jerusalem, right? But they are New York based. Is there anything that should be concerning with regards to family law, or it's completely normal and allowed with no issues?
Oh, so again, this really goes to, the issue of whether or not, there's something called comity within the law, and it's a legal term. That means if something is valid in one country or jurisdiction and it's valid here, we'll reciprocate. We'll accept it here if you accept it there. So again, very interesting question, because if they get married in Jerusalem and they're married by a clergyman who's authorized, not by Aunt Chaya, but by somebody who's actually has the authority to perform weddings, and if it's considered a legal marriage in the state of Israel, then New York will recognize that as a valid marriage. And I had a very interesting case once. I wasn't the attorney that was retained on it, but it's now written up all over, I think it went up to the Court of Appeals. A couple had a wedding in I think it was Cabo St. Lucas, if I remember correctly. Cabo St. Lucas, and it was solemnized by a friend of theirs.
Okay.
who got his, I guess, like some kind of license or something,
Online certificates.
online preacher license
Right.
to
Okay.
solemnize weddings in any
Yeah.
event. So they come back to New York, and the question is, are they married? Because
Mhm.
it wasn't a civil marriage performed in Mexico, because had it been a civil marriage there, then it would have been recognized in New York, most likely. So it's not a civil marriage. It's
Right.
technically what we would call on the cusp of a religious marriage. But
Mhm.
then is this person defined within the law of somebody who has the authority? The courts in that case found that that gentleman was not authorized to,
Really?
was, so when they came back and they spent 15 years living together, turns out they were never married.
Wow. Amazing.
So there's really at that, and luckily they didn't have any
Who
children.
was happier, him or her?
I don't know. I don't remember the specifics of the case, but I do remember it was very interesting from a legal perspective because, here you are, you're with somebody 10, 15 years, you decide to divorce, but there's nothing to divorce. So
Amazing.
now
Wow.
what do you do with the assets you've accumulated? If you don't own them together, there's no equitable distribution to be had.
Interesting.
And so it was a very interesting case. So be
Sure.
wary when you're going to go marry overseas.
Mhm.
Make sure that there's some kind of legal authority to have you marry there, or come back to New York and then get your marriage license here as well.
Good, solid piece of advice. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And we're going to come back to you with some more Q&As on divorce and mediation law. And we're going to talk about prenups. Prenups that we think are too prohibitive, meaning they're not going to stand up in court. We're going to discuss all that coming up. Please stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you.